The top 100 agents are the best of the best, listing and selling more than any other agent in Australia.
Sold. Congratulations, sir. Well bought.
These are the practices, actions and beliefs of the most successful agents in Australian real estate. Raw, honest and completely uncut. Welcome to REB's Secrets of the Top 100 Agents.
Well, good day everyone, it's Liam Garman here, editor of Real Estate Business, back today with another episode of the REB Podcast. And usually I say I'm joined by a special guest, but I think actually today it's better to say I'm joining a special guest because I'm here at McGrath HQ with a man who needs no introduction, the one and only John McGrath. This is our first ever podcast together. John, how you going?
It is, Liam. Yeah, good to be here. Thank you very much. No, it's good to share some insights. It's kind of been 40 years now in the industry, so hopefully I've got a few little tidbits that might be of interest.
No, and I was actually thumbing through your McGrath report, and there are some amazing insights in there, so highly recommended to all of our listeners to try and get your hands on a copy of that report. I'm going to go straight in because I do have a lot of questions. We have a lot of our audience, their agents, their principals. They're navigating what is quite a cluttered market at the moment. There are a lot of networks popping up. There are a lot of offices popping up. So I'd love to get your insight into how you've led, how you've scaled a national brand that a lot of people look up to. But I want to get a little bit of insight behind John McGrath. What are some of your leadership principles that have led and that have underpinned the growth behind McGrath?
Well, you said before, Liam, about a cluttered market, and a lot of people say that, it's competitive and it's more competitive and there's shortage of listings and so forth. I think I always take the view from an agent level, but also a leader level, that if you're remarkable, it's never cluttered. Because there are very few people that are remarkable. So whether you're a principal setting up one office, whether you're running a national group, whether you're an agent in a suburb or in an area, you have to seek to be remarkable. So you have to work out and unpack, what does that mean? What's your target market? And again, if you're a principal, it could be agents. If you're an agent, it's going to be vendors and buyers. What are they looking for? And then you've just got to work out a way to deliver it consistently. And I think, some people say we've done okay in the last 40 years, and I appreciate it. And I just say it's really about consistency. We're not reinventing the wheel every week. I think, we are looking for innovations as they come up. But it's really about how can you be consistent internally and externally, because all of us have got internal and external customers. So again, for principals and sales leaders, well, how do you actually inspire your entire team? So that's many years ago, a friend of mine he became a friend, but he was coaching me as a leader. And he said there's two jobs in leadership. One is to create energy, the other is to clear energy. And I think that's a pretty good summary. What are you doing in your business culturally as an individual, as a leader, to get people excited about being around you? And that will attract people. We talk about raving fans. So you want to attract people that want to be, and Matty Steinwade, who's our first ever franchisee and a dear friend of mine, and he says, man, you've got to get in the right vibration, which sounds a bit esoteric for many listeners perhaps, but it's, how do you need to be as a leader, as an agent in your community, in your office, in your network, so it creates a good vibe. You want to be the guy that when you walk in, the room feels good. Everyone feels safe. Everyone feels excited. Everyone feels they can sort of, conquer Mount Everest because you're there. And you want to be the agent when you're dealing with a vendor that is the one that they say, not only do I like and trust that person, they got a plan. I like the plan. It makes sense. They got a track record, so you're kind of ticking the boxes for them. And you just want to make it really easy to choose you. Again, whether you're a principal or an agent, how do you make it easy? So I think, we've unpacked the ingredients or the secrets to success, if you will. We've delivered them consistently. We're always looking to refine ourselves. Another thing the same guy said to me years ago, he said, a business will never outpace its leader or leaders. And I keep thinking of that. So the onus and the responsibility, Liam, is on the leader to keep reinventing themselves. If I was the same version of John McGrath as 40 years ago, I'm sure we wouldn't have, achieved some of the things we've achieved. So you've got to just keep growing, keep learning. Every single day, I'm on the phone. It's not on the phone. I'm in the car listening to podcasts, or on the phone, one of the two. But I want to know what people are saying on podcasts like this. I'm listening to real estate podcasts. I'm listening to business podcasts. Alex Hormozy at the moment's kind of, he's pretty hot around the world, and some of the things he's saying, and he's got nothing to do with real estate, but I bring them back into my coaching sessions the next day because they're totally relevant.
It reminds me of a comment on leadership by Colin Powell, where he was doing a military talk, and he said when he was a junior officer in the US Army, and his sergeant came up and he said to him that you want to be a leader where people will follow you out of nothing but curiosity. Yeah. And it sounds a bit weird, but when you unpack that a little bit more, it means that you've built that level of trust, as you've highlighted. You've inculcated that culture of excellence, of trust, of camaraderie, and that leadership aspect where people do have that faith in you that they will follow you, and they will follow you to do some weird stuff because, well, actually, I know John's got my back, and I've got John's back as a result of it. So, hey, if we're going to walk into an interesting new business strategy, well, sounds interesting. I'll follow you. Obviously, being remarkable is perhaps easier said than done, though, for a lot of people. Over 40 years of McGrath, but looking perhaps at the property industry more holistically, what are some common faults that have kept people from being remarkable?
First thing I'd say, I actually don't think being remarkable is all that elusive. I think that the world, in terms of its general standards, including the real estate industry, there's a fair degree of mediocrity out there. There's very few people that are extraordinarily excellent and also have radical integrity at the same time. We know there's some great performers that don't have integrity, and we know there's some people with great integrity that, for whatever reason, aren't performing. When you can connect both of those ideas into one body, you've got a pretty extraordinary and remarkable human being. So I think, you can be remarkable in terms of. So what do you have to do? How do you do it? Again, you've got to. I say choose yourself every day, every morning. And one thing we do have, you may or may not have money, or you may or may not have contacts or life experience. What you have every day is the ability to choose the best version of yourself, to take to work, to take to the lounge room, to take to listing appointments, and then to take home again. So I think, having a mindfulness around you are whoever you choose to be. If you buy into the business never outpaces the leader, well, as a leader, if you gave yourself a scorecard 0 to 10 on all the key leadership areas, where do you rate high and where are you letting yourself down? Some people are highly organised, but, they've got poor attention to detail, or they've got poor punctuality, or they get angry too often, or they're impatient, or whatever. You just got to look at all of the things that make a great leader if you want to become remarkable and step aside. So I don't think, again, if I look at our business and I look at maybe what we've achieved, I think it's there was never a flash of lightning bolt that all of a sudden we figured it out. It was about having a vision of, my vision when I started, I wanted to be the best real estate company in the world. And we strive for that every day. Don't know if we'll ever measure whether we get there or not, but it's a great place or direction to go to. So I look at that and I think, what can we do today? Who do I have to be to lead the charge, to head in that direction? How's our team performing? I don't look at our competitors very much. I have a sufficient awareness, so if there's anything we need to adjust, but I think a lot of people, they really fixate, even agents, they fixate on their competitors. Oh, so-and-so's market leader, they got 50% market share. They've been in the game 20 years, or someone else is charging 1%, whatever it is. None of those things are stopping you. The only thing that generally stops you from being remarkable is choosing the best version of yourself. And then setting up a system to allow you to do it, because you can have every great intention of being the best version and giving people amazing service and creating raving fans, but if you don't have a structure and a process and a systematic approach to do it, you're going to unravel. You're going to find that something's going to go wrong at some point. So it's, again, I talk about character and process. So choose yourself, the best version, character, and then have the right systems and process, which includes technology, but is not limited to technology. It's just the way you go about things. You talked earlier about coaching. I've got a certain coaching process. So when I sit down with an agent, it doesn't feel to them like a process, but I kind of know that I'm heading in a direction and I go in a certain way, and they've got a bit of flexibility. Same in a listing presentation. When I go to a listing presentation, it doesn't feel like I'm a robot running through an agenda or checklist, but I know where I'm starting and I know where I want to finish, and I know kind of what's likely to be the process along the way. and I follow that. So I think systemization is really critical.
I really like your point about not necessarily always looking over your shoulder to see what your competitors are doing. And we've had guests on this podcast before, and this is almost a direct quote where people have said, I get so angry when I see another signboard up of one of my competitors. And I hadn't really reflected on it, but perhaps digging into your point further, when you get so angry over seeing a signboard, while it could be a good motivator, it also runs the risk of creating that perhaps emotional imbalance, which then does throw off your ability to choose who you want to be on that given day, and then does foment those problems which you highlighted before. Perhaps it's attention to detail or a lack of organisation, or perhaps it's being very angry.
But if you let it, Liam, see, the thing is, and you're right, for most people, something will come up and it'll put them off for the day or the week or the month or even longer sometimes. But that's because they let it. If you have a view on the world that sometimes I'm going to get not the desired result, despite me with every best intention and every best effort and me really feeling I was the best person for the job, they will choose another company to work for, or they will choose another person to list with. So you just got to accept that's part of the terrain. And if you spend any more than 30 seconds of, and the 30 seconds should be spent on, is there anything I could have done better? I'll learn it for next time. It's not about, damn, that competitor and they must have underquoted and that bloody vendor told me I was going to get it. I just think that's the world we live in, And the beauty is you don't have to get every piece of business or every recruit that you're going for to have a wonderful life and a successful business. For most people, if they get 50% of, and depending on volume, but 50% of the listings you're going for, or the people you'd like to recruit, or whatever is could be people watching that aren't in real estate, volume is important. So if you just did nothing more, if you chose the best version of yourself and took that version to work every day, and if you're a principal and you rang 2 people a day for the rest of your life to connect with them and say, hey, just noticed you're doing some great work, Liam. One day I'd love to have a coffee with you. Who knows what's going to happen in the future. I've made those calls for 40 years. I'm still making those calls. I've already made 2 today. And that's just to check in with people. One of them was someone that left us about a year ago, and I just want to see how they're going because it might be time for them to come back. And the other one is someone I just heard a few people talking about, young fella in second, third year of real estate. People are telling me he's doing really good. So I just rang him up. I said, I'm hearing great things. Keep doing what you're doing. If you ever want a cup of coffee, I'm happy to share some of my insights. Not necessarily trying to recruit you, but who knows what's going to happen in the future. And he said, I'd love to catch up and meet with you. So, it's all about just, the quantity and the quality of the conversations you're having.
I think a lot of people listening would be quite, not shocked, that might not be the best word, but quite interested that someone of your standing in the industry is still doing the basics, the phone calls, even junior agents, I think it's reasonable to say.
No, he's a young agent. This guy's 21. Yeah.
Given that you're, running a really large business, I think that there is something here about time management, administration, organisation. How do you structure your workload to allow you to still do those phone calls?
I think it's all about focus and priorities. There are people that say they're working 12 hours a day, but they're really working 2 or 3. If you look at the serious conversations or face-to-face appointments with qualified customers or opportunities, it's 2 or 3, not 10 or 12. So, I understand. I have a great team around me and they do the stuff I don't want to do or I'm not great at. And the things that I'm really great at are coaching and selling the vision to our team or people that might want to join us, listings, strategizing. I've just spent half an hour this morning with one of our team strategizing on how to get a big listing that he's going to in about a week's time. That's stuff that is really my forte. That's my sweet spot. So I go there and I don't spend too much time on the back end stuff, but I have a great team that are doing the compliance and the financials and those things. And I get them to let me know when they need feedback from me or they're ready to sort of update me. So I think as an agent, to be quite honest, prospect, list, sell is the only 3 things you've got to be doing out there. And prospecting, part of that, staying in touch with past clients. So if prospect, list, sell, so if you divided your week up or your day up into a third or a half, 50-50, and you said, okay, mornings I'm going to do prospecting on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then Tuesday, Thursday I'm going to spend all day with buyers, and then Saturdays opens and auctions, which is exactly the sort of ideal week I used to structure when I was selling. And then it becomes pretty easy. There's always enough. People say not enough time, and I always say there's enough time if you're focused on what are the priorities, because maybe you have a to-do list this long, but in amongst that, there's 5 things that are game-changing. Stick to the game-changing things, and you'll often find everyone that's listening will understand. Sometimes you find a to-do list from 12 months ago, and you look at it, and there's a foolscap page or 2, and 3/4 of things you never did, and life's fine. But imagine if you just had focus on what are the important things. So, for me, staying in touch with talent is key. For me, and in addition, so I have what I call growth calls, which is connecting with people that we either used to work with together or I'd like to work with. The other one is nurture calls. So there are people within my team, and we've got 160 offices or thereabouts. And, I've got to stay in touch. Someone's birthday, someone else did a record. Yesterday, someone did their first $1 million year ever. They've just hit it, a couple of weeks out or a few weeks out from Christmas. So, I gave them a call, congratulate them. Someone else's birthday this morning that I've rung. So that's kind of connecting with my current team. And I got to say, you can't underestimate the importance of those little calls and congratulations and recognition points, and we call them moments of truth. These are the times when someone says, "Oh, I just heard from John. Great. I'm up at Rockhampton. I didn't even know I kind of existed." Well, of course I know. Everyone's important.
I think that's a great insight, because it is those little touch points that that drive that loyalty, that drive that respect. Looking back on the growth of McGrath, what are some of the strategic decisions that have made the biggest impact in growing the network?
Look, very early we were super focused on growing slowly. So it took 7 years to go from 1 office to 2. And then I think it was 2 or 3 years to go.
Where was the first office?
First office in Paddington, Woollahra. So, I look at that, and, we're at 160 now, and we're growing by about 30, 35 a year. So that kind of, for most people, will sound fast, but you've got to build the platform and you've got to build a solid foundation. You're going to build a house, get the foundation right. Don't go too fast building up. So I think it was going slowly to go fast. Going slowly at first to go fast down the track was important. I think strategically, might sound boring, but just select the best team. If you've got the right people on the bus in the right roles, you can go anywhere you want. If you haven't got the right people, or if the good people are doing the wrong roles, it's going to be hard yards. I think setting up standards, again, this is all platform stuff, Liam, but we set up really high standards of the way we present our premises, the way we deal with customers, the way we deal with the inevitable complaints that you're always going to get at some point. I think that's really critical. The quality of people that we recruit, we're fairly meticulous about the quality of people we let into the brand. Not from an elitist point of view, because we're not elitist at all, but we know that there's certain ways we like doing business, and integrity is non-negotiable. And we know this is an industry where not everyone teaches that integrity is non-negotiable. In fact, some people teach do whatever you got to do to get the listing, or do whatever you got to say to get the sale, which is it's not going to be a bad formula for coming to work here, because that's not how we operate, the way we see the world. So strategically, look, I formed a board of directors, after a number of years as the company started scaling, because I felt I needed people with far more life and business experience than me to guide me. And still to this day, we've had several different boards over the years, but I think always making sure you have some really wise, experienced people to bounce ideas off is really critical, and hold you accountable. As a business owner, leader, or CEO, often there's no one to be accountable to, especially if you own 100% of the business, which I don't, but a lot of people listening to this probably do. So I think that's important to surround yourself. Just building platform, demanding excellence from yourself and others. They're probably some of the strategies, I guess, and the tactics that we've used.
I think it might have been a Standards Australia report or a report from a similar body that had estate agents right at the bottom in terms of that trust. So it is quite refreshing to hear about the ethics, the integrity aspect, which is a non-negotiable from coming to work at McGrath. How do you teach that? How do you impart that on your team to make sure that they're upholding integrity and ethics at all times?
By the way, I think journalists were very close to real estate agents.
Probably.
Must
We're
say
second
that.
lowest. Yeah. Well, what about property journalists? And I think the combination will put me at the bottom.
It's got to be the Look, again, it starts at the top. The CEO, the owner, the founder, the executive team have got to live and breathe. I call it radical integrity. I got that from Ray Dalio. I read a book of his called Principles that I recommend everyone read. Any listeners, if you haven't read Ray Dalio's Principles, please get it immediately. It's a great book. And he talks about that. So you have to live and breathe in everything you do, every conversation. You can't say to people in a training room, oh, you got to be really honest, and then go into a boardroom behind closed doors and not be honest. So it's got to become a lifestyle and a way of doing business in the office. So we're very good at the integrity and the transparency. You've got to pull people up, because sometimes, again, people come to us that have been trained elsewhere in different ideals, and we have these conversations, but still sometimes they bring those not so great habits. We pull them up straight away and we say, man, I just heard you quoting X. That's kind of not what's on the agency agreement, or that's not really what you think it's going to go for, is it? And then ultimately, if they can't, bring themselves to dealing with the integrity and transparency, you've got to let them go. So we walk our talk with regard to that. But that's the opportunity. When I got into the industry, and sadly it hasn't changed enough in the last 40 years, but a lot of people said, oh, what do you want to get real estate? People look down on real estate agents, and they're a bit of a, sort of low level sort of bunch of people, like car salesmen and property journalists. No, just joking. And I thought I saw that as the opportunity. I thought, well, imagine, how important is it to find your next home? It's pretty important, whether you're a tenant or a buyer or a seller wanting to sell a home. It's a pretty important job in one's life. It doesn't happen every day. And if people out there are systematically telling half-truths, if not bald-faced lies to people, what an opportunity to come in and be the refreshing voice of integrity. And that's what we found, coming in there, is people want straight talk. I mean, I get frustrated. You hear of agents that open for inspections and the buyer comes in and says, so Liam, what are you thinking? And Liam says, oh, well, it's very early to tell. I really don't know. I'm interested in your feedback and I have no idea. And man, I know you've had a 1 hour conversation with the vendor last week about what's been selling, what's it worth, what do they want. Why wouldn't you just give me that data? Well, to be honest, John, we're looking at 900 to $1 million. The best sale in the area is 980. We'd love to think we might be up at those levels, but we certainly think early to mid nines is where the interest is going to be. Great. Tell me that. Thank you for making it easy for me to deal with you or choose not to deal on this particular property. It's not hard, but it doesn't happen. It hardly ever happens in this industry. Straight talk. And I just think it's amazing. And I talk about it, on our own podcast a bit with Tommy Panos. It's like, man, it can't be that hard to be straight up and down with people, is it? But it seems to be. But because it's people don't want to have the honest conversations with vendors. They've been somewhere, someone's been taught, and it kind of gets passed down the line. Oh, look, vendor's always going to want way more than it's worth, but just agree with them, sign it up, and then you'll sort of, find a way to talk them down over time. Well, that's why the industry's got a bad name still, because people are doing that. Versus, give me some facts and figures, give me some data, talk me through the process, tell me, don't tell me something's impossible. Because I say to a vendor, you want $1 million for it, that'd be a record price, I'm up for a record price, here's what I'm going to do, but you need to know that the last 6 sales similar to yours have been 920 to 960. So you can, without taking away hope from someone about, because sometimes we do achieve kind of incredible results. In fact, a lot of the time, which is
why record prices exist.
Every
right?
time you break a record, generally you've obviously by definition you've gone into new territory, and you shouldn't be apologetic about that. But it's the things I hear in the industry where someone's quoting 900 on a property and it passes in at 1.1, and you think that's the really bad stuff. A lady came to me many years ago, Liam, and she said to me, I've heard you talk. I think it was on radio or something back then. It was pre-podcast time, and she said. About integrity, and I believe that it's really important to you. And I had a not so great dealing with one of your staff at an auction we attended last weekend. I wouldn't mind just coming in and I said, sure, come in. Anyway, she came in and she told me the story that she'd been quoted 800. She had a budget of 850, so she's excited, did all the building report, pest report, came to the auction. First bid was 900, went for $1,050,000. It kind of clearly feels like our person wasn't as open and honest as they should have been. And she said, John, look, I've been to agents. I know the game. I know a lot of agents lie. I'm big enough and I've been around enough blocks to deal with it. But she said, what I can't deal with is my 8-year-old went to school and showed the brochure at show and tell and said, this is the home that mummy and daddy are buying on the weekend. And then my kid has been in tears when we had to come back from the auction and tell them. That's the game we're in, is human game. It's people, it's emotions, it's feelings. You do not, as an agent in my world, have the right for your own personal financial satisfaction of lying to people just to get a deal, just to get a listing, just to get someone to an auction. A lot of people say, I'll quote them low and watch them go, or some rubbish that I've heard. Well, quote them low. People go and they take contracts to solicitors. They start incurring real costs. They get building reports done. And worse than all of that is they fall in love with a home that maybe they never had a chance of buying. And I just think that's just insanity. That's unacceptable in an industry that in a sense does quite an important thing in the community, which is helps people find their next home.
I can only imagine that, behind the scenes you would see there'd be market research done on this in terms of the negative effect that would also have on a brand, which is especially to your earlier point with the vendor expectation management, if you don't do that expectation management piece right, or if you are potentially underquoting and you annoy maybe a few dozen people in the process of that might be looking to list their own homes as well, the negative contagion that has on your brand, the negative contagion that it has on future listings for you. How critical, maybe what's the data saying about the importance of word of mouth to maintain that human, that emotional priority when you're dealing with both vendors and buyers?
To this day, if you're a great agent, you should be getting 75% of your business from referral and word of mouth.
That's a lot.
Still, you have to be. Now, that's not a statistic. That's my gut anecdotal feeling, and certainly was my experience as an agent. People came to me because I dealt with integrity in the field. I followed them through. They'd been told by their neighbour I did a great job, etc. And that should be how every agent. This whole thing of having to ring up people at night when they're trying to put the kids to sleep and say, can we list your property? I don't think that's longevity, and I think privacy is going to stop a lot of people doing that in the future. So word of mouth should be your number one area. Word of mouth comes from a good experience plus being guided in the right manner. And all the stuff that I've just spoken about is the wrong way to do it. So I think it's critical. I know REA did a stat regarding not putting price guides on properties. So slightly different, but again, a lot of the reason people don't put price guides is because they've had a different conversation with the owner than they're having with the buyers, and they don't want the twain to meet in the middle. So REA says, I think it's 71% of people are likely to pass by a property on their website if it doesn't have a price.
100%, yeah.
So that means that if you're an agent and you think you're doing the right thing by the client, possibly let's say 50%. Do you really want to have half your buyers just drive by in a virtual or digital sense and do the next listing? That's insanity. The other statistic was, I think it was 62 or 63% thought the agent is less trustworthy if they don't put a price. If they put contact agent or price on request, they came to, when these focus groups they said that they felt less trustworthy. So again, less trustworthy equals no referral, word of mouth. So be remarkable and be honest and be transparent. Go in the market and tell people the real price you're expecting, and that can change. I mean, just because I start quoting 8 to 850 because that's where it sits, and all of a sudden the interest is hotting up, and for some reason, which is a great outcome, I've got 12 contracts out, and I've had interest, that are saying they'll go above 850. I got to adjust. I've got to keep everyone updated. I mean, pricing is fluid. I get that much. But agents know. Agents that are listening here know what I'm talking about when they misrepresent prices to buyers and sellers just so they can get the deal done.
I think even from my own property journey, that strikes me as something that I do. I always scroll past properties that don't have a price for the exact reason that you highlighted before, the time wasting. You don't want to get through the whole process just to kind of get burnt on the other side. And so given that what most listings would happen between 10 to midday on a Saturday, and you've only got so much time, you're going to prioritise the ones which you think are the most realistic opportunities.
Totally, you're exactly right. Let's unpack that a little bit. almost every customer you're going to sell to is going to be dual income nowadays. There's not too many households that don't need the second income to survive and to buy a property. So that's critical. Most of them are also going to have kids at sport and various other commitments on a Saturday. So I don't have unlimited time to waste leaving messages for agents, popping into opens that I can't afford. So again, you become that person in your market that's trustworthy. And when you say 8 to 850, that's probably where it's going to land, or that's certainly where the reserve's going to be, and that's where most of the bidding is. And occasionally it's going to go for 900. I get it. Well done. You've got a great result. So, when we talked initially when we started the podcast about, how do you stand out and how do you be remarkable, the surprising thing is be honest. It's not that complex.
And that's where you get that 75, 80% of referrals from word of mouth because you've built up that local trust base. You mentioned something earlier, which is the prospecting at night when people are trying to cook or put their kids to bed, and the risk of privacy perhaps, removing that lead gen pipeline that a lot of agents rely on. Throughout your career in real estate, you would have seen a real transformation in listings and in technology, right the way from classified ads to what we have now with digital portals as well. Where do you see technology taking real estate over the next 10 years?
Well, just touching on your first point, I think there's no doubt. I mean, we've seen no junk mail in letterboxes. We've seen do not call registers. As more and more people, not just real estate, but all sorts of various call centres trying to sell whatever their service or product is, annoy the public, it's going to get harder and harder. And at some point, you just won't be able to ring. I mean, I know, and I'm sure you're the same, when I see a number that I don't have in my contacts, I don't answer it. Because it's 9 out of 10, it's going to be someone that's trying to connect. And if it's not, they'll probably send me a text saying, hey, I missed you, but you haven't met me, and then we'll have the discussion. I'll call them back. So I think that's really, really important. Going forward, look, clearly the biggest thing that's changed in the last 40 years for me anyway is clearly the internet. What's happened there? You went from shopping out of store windows and walking the dog and looking for stuff, and then the local paper was the distribution channel. Now it's globally online. But the rise of social media and soon to be AI attached to social media is moving at a faster rate than even the digital space. So I think, going forward, nowadays we're selling a lot of property just as much on social media sometimes as we are online. So online's great, it's traditional, but what online misses is the passive buyer. So someone who's not active but would buy a new property, would upgrade or downgrade if something was made available to them, and they're scrolling through Facebook or Instagram, and then an ad pops up and it's a beautiful image and it's got a price again, and they look at it, oh, gee, honey, we should have a look at this one. This looks great, and we could afford it, and we could down trade, and we could help our kids buy property. So I think that for passive buyers, social media is tremendous. AI, as we speak, we're starting to really, investigate how we can best harness AI going forward. I think AI is going to change, obviously, the entire world in even less time than social media's, built its force. And I think over the next 2 or 3 years, as an agent or as a company or as a brand, you've got to be looking at how can you utilise AI to deliver better service to your internal clients, your agents, better service to your external clients, buyers and sellers, tenants and landlords, better ways to run your business. I mean, there'll be a time when I can know exactly if I'm going to sit down with coaching for 30 minutes with you, AI will tell me exactly where you're on track and off track. It'll be able to look at all the KPIs, the data, your results, and everything. And, someone sent me one the other day, a friend of mine sent me one, which is a role-playing where it's got a manufactured voice or a synthetic voice, and the agent can get on the phone and role-play with a vendor that's, around talking about price or a negotiation or a listing objection, and then it will rate you at the end of the call as to how well you handled it and recommend what you might have done better, and there's no human involved. So you look at that, if you're not taking advantage of that, and when I say that, I wouldn't panic if someone's saying, I don't know any of that stuff, because neither do any of us really. It is in the early stage, but it's growing momentum rapidly. So you've got to figure it out. Go and read a book, go and read some articles, jump on YouTube, follow some Instagram experts on AI, and just check it out and just work out how you might be able to harness the power of AI going forward, because it's going to be the biggest game changer of all.
I find that people get very scared of change, and even looking at my own career, every time there's been a new tool or a new platform, me personally, mea culpa, I'm always really hesitant to change. I remember when a few jobs ago when Asana and Trello first started coming around, I'm like, what's this? I don't want to have to waste my time doing this. This isn't going to change anything. And then after about 6 months, I'm like, oh, wow, this has dramatically improved my workflow. But at the crux of that, a lot of people are resistant to change. They push back against change. So when you're in an organisation, it has to be a top-down organisational approach. How do you inculcate at McGrath embracing positive change? How do you go about driving that through the organisation?
Well, just like integrity and authenticity starts at the top. So, you can't be a leader and saying, you guys got to embrace AI or social media. You've got to be, doing it yourself. So I think that's really critical. You're right about resistance to change. I mean, this is the age of information. Everything is out there. It's 2 mouse clicks away from a YouTube clip, an article, a great magazine and website like your own. All those things are available, but you got to click and you got to read and you got to make time. So, I think it starts at the top. I think it was Eric Shinziki was his name. He was a general in the US Army, and he said, if you don't like change, you're going to like extinction even less. And, you think about reality is if you hadn't embraced digital selling, if you just said, oh, no, I'm just going to keep putting it in the Mossman Daily, well, you would have been run out of town. If you're not embracing now social media marketing, both for your own personal brand potentially, but certainly for your properties and the like, you're going to lose. If AI doesn't become a point of interest pretty soon for you, you are going to start falling behind. You don't have to be expert. I think a lot of people think, I'm not an AI expert, I'm not a technology guy. I mean, I'm 62 years of age. Like, I didn't grow up with a computer on my desk like some people do, which is great. So it's not a natural thing for me either. And you're a hell of a lot younger, but, the same. There's this, I don't know where to start. Just start somewhere. Just read an article. Just find a friend. I've got a couple of good friends who are very advanced in the AI, and I'm catching up with them as regularly as I can and just picking their brain. If you were me, where would you start looking for AI opportunities? And I'm getting insights from them. And then I'm just going on to AI and doing things, and every day I do 4 or 5 searches and, what would you do if you were me in this situation? And, can you have a look at my business from the outside in and tell me, give me 10 points you think we could be doing better? Just whatever question you can think of, just bang it into AI. Take a Chat GPT or a Claude subscription. In fact, I think a lot of them have freemiums. You can go in and pay nothing and get a few searches a day. But you got to show up and you got to be there.
And this comes back to the curiosity that we were discussing earlier, which is your point about extinction. If you follow business as usual, but your competitors are innovating, your business is going to collapse.
Yeah.
There's no other way around it. To your point about advertising the Mossman Daily, it's just not going to work. So it's acknowledging that in rapid technological change, if you're not keeping up with the technological change, that you might not be in the industry for much longer.
Yeah.
Taking a little bit of a pivot back into talent, I'd love to get a little bit of insight from McGrath about how you retain and attract the top talent in a time where there is competition over fighting for the best principals and the best agents.
Yeah, it's a war for talent like I've never seen before, which is it's part of the terrain, and you've got to compete. Why have we been successful? I think we've built a culture that's attractive, and whether that's sort of head office or company-owned stores or the other 100 and odd offices, you have to have an attractive culture. Again, starts at the top. I've had a focus on talent attraction, identifying talent, connecting with talent, coaching talent for a long time, which of course then, if you do that long enough and if you develop enough skills, all of a sudden you have some great case studies. I mean, Alex Jordan that works with us in Brisbane that you would know of. Alex, in my opinion, he's close to the best agent I've seen in 40 years, alongside Matt Steinwade and Alex Phillips and people of that calibre. And when I met him, he was doing $380,000 a year in GCI. I'm not saying it's a terrible number, but now he's doing $10 million a year. And he made some changes, and we were a small part of his change. He changed brand, which was kind of probably a bigger part, but some of the coaching and the conversations we're able to have and point him in the right direction. And so when you've got a number of case studies like that, people hear about it, they read about it, they say, wow, okay, well, that company's obviously got a little bit of magic dust that's able to... But you've got to keep working at it because, someone else is chasing the same talent you are. So you've got to keep working and working, which hence the calls. And, those 2 that I've made this morning, they're 2 of probably half a dozen I make today. It's just connecting, and I'm not reaching out with any particular expectation. I'm reaching out to say, let's stay connected. If there's any... I know a lot of people are loyal. That'd be the number one thing that delays or stops people coming to join us. So many people, I'm across the table and they say, oh, John, I can see that it makes total sense, and I love your brand, I love, what you've built and your culture, but so-and-so gave me a start and I feel like a part of the family, which I totally respect, by the way, and I say that to them. So that sort of loyalty factor is out there, but that's why I just say there's no rush, man. I'm in this for the long game. If this doesn't work, maybe a principal ends up selling the business to someone else. Maybe he sells it to you. Well done. If I can give you any advice on running a better business, let me know. But just things change, life changes. The number of people that I've had that have joined after 10 years of conversations. Not every day, not every week, but staying in touch, inviting them. We have a few events. We invite them to some of our events, and we play the long game. And all of a sudden, and then some people come the first time you meet them. They're not happy where they're at. They haven't been as well treated as the other example, and they say, "Where do I sign?" I just want to come across straight away. So it's the same with listings. Sometimes it takes a decade, before someone's ready to list with you, and the other time is you meet them this afternoon. They're on the market tonight.
What are some of the main reasons that you see people leave their networks?
Agents or officers?
Well, let's go principals.
I think people get lonely, and if you're not connecting with people, which for us is going to be a challenge as we're growing, right? Because when we had 50 officers, not so hard. Now at 160, a bit harder. When we get to 250, it's going to be a bit harder. So I think connectivity, some of the groups' numbers are so huge, and they have a huge number of officers and principals. It's very hard for the senior. They'll have a regional manager doing something, but it's very hard for the senior people. So I'm cognizant of that, so I need to work harder on that going forward. I think people want to be part of a winning brand. And at the moment in Australia, I think there's a handful of winning brands, some bigger, some smaller. It doesn't really matter about the size. It matters about what are you doing. And you can't underestimate. I mean, it's just like the NRL. Everyone wants to play for Penrith or, for the Storm because they're winners and they've got a winning formula. And you know that if you play for them, there's a pretty good chance you're going to be in the grand final next year. Where there are other clubs, that have been cellar dwellers for a while, and they find it hard to attract the real talent. So, you've got to be one of those, Storm type businesses that attract people. You've got to develop a system for success. And I think that's a big part of it. We talked before about innovation and change. I think people want to be part of companies that are constantly on the edge of innovation, and they don't have to be the first mover, but they've got to be sort of fully equipped when it comes to all of those things. We're finding, which is different to the entire industry, people want to be a part of integrity, and sometimes they get sick and tired of going to conferences and hearing dirty stories of we got that listing like that, and we did this, and those things are no longer acceptable. And the world's changed. I mean, behaviour even in an office or in a brand. At one point, you could do certain things, sadly, and no one seemed to bat an eyelid. Nowadays, you've got to clean up. And I think so people want to be a part of a winning formula, want to be part of a good culture, want to be part of an ethical environment, even things like sustainability and, the environmental sort of stuff. Important, man. If you're 65, you mightn't think about it as much, but I've got to tell you, your kids and your grandkids are thinking about it. And if you're a company that continues to serve, tiny example, but important, maybe it's not tiny. A couple of years ago, or probably 4 years ago, we made the decision to stop serving single-use plastics in the office. So people would come in for a meeting, out would come the tray, and there's 4 Mount Franklins. So we worked out, it was hundreds of thousands, and all our company offices, that was the habit. Yeah. And we worked out the hundreds of thousands of bottles that we were ultimately, probably most of them get tossed in the ocean and in the wrong place. So we just made the decision we're not going to do that anymore.
As a company?
Well, it started with company owned, and as people come on board, we talk about our values and what we do. Yeah. But I can certainly talk to company owned. We now have jugs of water that are chilled and that we serve them water in a glass. Now, that might sound small, but whether you're an office or a cluster of offices or a national group, it all counts.
It sums up.
So, ethics, integrity, sustainability, success, if you can tick those boxes, you are going to attract the talent. Now, it's one of those things, as you attract more talent, you attract more talent. And as you get more success, you get more success, more case studies. So it becomes a really self-fulfilling, positive, upward spiral of success going forward.
And I guess maybe on that note, looking forward for McGrath as well, I'd like to unpack the rise of the super teams, in particular, the move to the agent business model. Can you talk us through that?
Yeah, once upon a time you're an agent and that was it. You didn't have a PA. There was a secretary at the front desk, and that person would do the administration for everyone. And simple times. That's where I started. And then as people became better and they were more in demand, they had to find a way, either not find a way, hit a glass ceiling, or find a way to move beyond the glass ceiling. And a lot of agents, I think it was the first or second ARIC going back 27 years, where we brought Bob Boland and Bob Wolf across from the States, and they talked about EBUs, effective business units, commonplace today. We never heard of it. And they say, in America, and in America they were probably 10 years ahead of us in building these. So it came and it was kind of identified at ARIC, and then a few people, latched onto it and they started building a team. And of course the good ones started getting some success. But we're still nothing compared with the States. You go to the States now, you'll find agents with a team of 40 or 50 around them. That's kind of a company in my eyes, but they do. Alex Jordan's got a team of 5. He's doing 10 million a year. So I don't think you need 40 or 50, but I do think the agents that are able to leverage their success, again, similar concept that Dr. Fred Gross taught us at ARIC, first ARIC. He talked about dollar productive activities, and he said, there are things in life that make you money and add value, and there are other things that are just, cutting keys and photocopiing contracts. They're all got to be done. But if you're capable of earning $1,000 an hour, if you're a brilliant negotiator or auctioneer or lister, why would you be doing things that, are $30 an hour activities that you could hire someone to do? So, he brought that concept in, and I think the good people latched onto it. And Alex Phillips has probably got a team of half a dozen. Alex Jordan's got 5. Matty Steinwade's got 4. Even the very best agents in the country, their teams are not huge. But I think that's a direction that people are going to follow, because a lot of people who are good at buyer servicing, for example, but they're not good at listing or prospecting, but you put them in front of a buyer and they're really good at identifying the right home and selling the benefits and taking them there and taking them back and getting a good offer. So I think that there are some agents that don't have a full suite of strengths around all the services, but they're really good in some areas of that. So you'll find them, you'll find a great team leader who's terrific at prospecting and listing, and they want to have the best buyer servicing agents in the country underneath them or around them, looking after getting as many people through. I know one of the top agents that I coach, his goal is from when he lists a property to get 10 buyers through in the first 3 to 4 days. Now, most agents are too busy or too distracted to do that. A lot of agents get a listing and the open's on Saturday week, so I'll turn up for the open. And that's about it. Whereas, this agent that's saying in the first 48, 72 hours, my goal is to get 10 people that are qualified through it because I want early momentum, that's a better business. So they're going to have more sold signs up than the guy that waits for the first open for inspection.
So the crux, the main difference between the super teams and perhaps a more traditional model is that it allows the agents to go back to that, and I'm going to test myself here, your 3 points earlier, prospect, list, sell.
Yeah.
So essentially, agents can go back to doing the core part of the job.
Yeah, certainly. Step 1 is get rid of all the administrative activities, the key cutting and the calling for contracts and following up contracts and ordering the marketing, all that stuff. It's all important, but doesn't need to be done by a top agent. So once you've done that, you then look at prospect, list, sell, and you say, well, which are the bits that I'm best at? And a good agent's normally good at all 3. Which are the bits that I'm very best at? What are the best leverage points for me? Now, maybe I'm brilliant in the lounge room and I'm brilliant on the phone, getting convincing people to, list with me. And I'm really good at selling property, but I can actually have someone do a lot of the legwork, take the people through, take them through a second time, get a pest and building report, get a valuation done, And as the top agent, maybe you get re-involved when there's a negotiation to be had, because that might be another area of your expertise. So I think you've just got to work out, what do you want to do? What are you best at? Who can you replace to do the other things? And just create a seamless experience from that.
Now, conscious of your time, John, one last question. What's the next 12 months got in store for John McGrath?
Well, it's kind of more of the same. Every 12 months is the same but different. So as I said, we're at about 160 offices, and we believe we've got a pipeline that'll probably take that close to 200 by the end of the next 12 months. So we're excited because bringing on new people, exciting people. Again, the case study. I mean, we've got this great team up at Rockhampton. These two young fellas came to us for another brand and said, "Oh, we'd like to start a McGrath franchise. We got no experience, but we got lots of energy, lots of excitement." And they're like now number one within 2 years, and they are killing it. One's writing nearly 2 million, the other's writing around 1.5. And they've created this great young team around them, and they're just going so hard, and they're changing their lives in real time. I love seeing that. So, for me, it's about, can we identify the talent out there? Can we help them, sort of form their own business? That's important. Most important thing, though, is always just, how do I help our current team be better? So, what are the things we can be doing around better training, better coaching, better systems, better technology, better tools? We talked about AI, social media and digital as being major changes, but 40 years later, there's a lot that hasn't changed. Giving people great service, following through on your promises, following up people that want to be followed up, talking straight, being honest, all those things. I was sort of taught, or I figured that stuff out 40 years ago, and that's still critically important today. So, more things change, some things stay the same. So for us, it's about just getting better. AI will definitely be an area of focus. We're already into those conversations about creating an AI platform for various parts of our business, critical. But look, I'm constantly dissatisfied. My team will tell you, you don't know. Again, people say, it's really good, your business is doing well, whatever. And I just say, man, if we're going to Everest, we're at base camp. We're not even a third or a quarter of the way up to Everest yet. And I think my best years are ahead of me. Whilst I've been in the game 40 years, I think I'm seeing it. Michael Clark said to me years ago, the cricketer, Michael Clark, not the real estate agent, who's also a dear friend and a great agent, but Michael Clark, the cricketer, he said to me, "John, at my peak, I was at the crease, the fastest bowlers in the world were coming in, the ball would leave their hand in slow motion, I could see which way the seam was spinning, and he said I was seeing it like a slow motion, like a watermelon coming to me, and I'd just choose, I'd say, where am I going to put this one?" I think that's when you're kind of starting to reach, a level of black belt or mastery in whatever you're doing. I think you start seeing things like Clarkey did, at the crease. And, I think for me, in, real estate version, I'm starting to see things clearly in slow motion. And so I'm very excited about the future. Our recent partnership with Bailey's and Knight Frank is incredibly exciting. I mean, it gives us global connectivity. Knight Frank, which, probably a lot of your listeners will see them as a great Australian commercial brand, which they are, but elsewhere in the world, they're the greatest luxury residential brand.
Really?
Luxury.
See, I didn't even know that.
Oh, you go. No, most people. And, you're in the industry.
Because I was more focused on the commercial locally.
And they do a great job commercially here. But you go to London, they have 50% market share of what they call super prime, above £10 million residential.
Yeah, right.
They are, and you go to India, Dubai, all the Paris, everywhere where there's good real estate. Knight Frank are generally dominant. So that's something a lot of people don't know.
Yep.
So we've now got, we're blessed that we went to bed on the 30th of June and we woke up the next morning with a partner who is the global icon in residential real estate that's now connected us to the rest of the world. So we want to leverage that. So there's no shortage of great things to be done. So we're hitting 26, very excited. I think the industry should too. I get a strong feeling that for the agents that have positioned their business and themselves in the market right, I think there's going to be a lot of business to be done. So, yeah, hopefully there's a few things that we've been able to say that could help them get ready for 26.
That's fantastic, and I can see the drive, the enthusiasm, the ambition. Of course, you're still at base camp, so there's more to go. Well, you're not, but to yourself, still at base camp, so more to go. Actually, just to close us off, we've had a few sporting references so far. Who is your NRL team?
Oh, so Rabbitohs. So
you're a Rabbitohs guy.
I grew up in Bexley, which is St George, technically, but close to South. But my brothers went for St George, and I didn't get on with my brothers, so I picked, and I had a little rabbit as a pet, so I picked the Rabbitohs, and then Russell Crowe, who I went to school with, and Russ and I have been friends for, 45 years. We're both sort of 61, 62. And he asked me to join the board a long time ago, so I spent a good decade on the board of Souths. I think Souths are a great culture team. They've had their problems of late. Obviously, they had their finest moment for a long time in 2014. But, and so many times, we use sporting metaphors and not just NRL, AFL and swimming and everything because it's a lot. Being an elite athlete, it's like being an elite agent. It's preparation, it's visualisation, it's the physical and mental fitness for it all. So, so let's hope that McGrath and the Rabbitohs have a better year. Rabbitohs anyway have a better year than last year.
A big year. Well, I'm tipping a big year for the West Tigers. Look, that is all we have time for today on the REB podcast. Thank you so much for joining us, John.
Thanks, Liam.
And that is us for today on the Real Estate Business Podcast, and we'll be back at the same time next week with another episode. But until then, bye-bye.